Peace and respect to you all. Welcome to Demolished Doctrine, the beginning of the end of religions, and our regular Wednesday night challenge series. I've been away for a month. I was on a remote rebuild, and I've already shared pictures of that, and it's boring as hell. But anyway, okay. So the restaurant business is a little bit slow right now, Mac. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, typical for
And
this time of year.
and Big Zebra, when was the last time you added something to bigzebra.com?
Oh, it's been ages. I have to get on it, but I'm very sleepy these days, so it makes it hard. I spend too much of my time goofing around on the internet, so I should really be writing. I was thinking of getting of joining a writers group to get off my ass, just to have a schedule to submit regular work.
A little bit
Those
of
could be
motivation
great.
from a little bit of peer pressure, voluntary, something like that.
Yeah, that sort of thing, just to get back in the swing of things. How about you, Richard? You've obviously been busy.
It's just distraction. I consider it a pain to have to earn money.
Mm.
Welcome, Moon Medi, and also Sammy and Crypta. Thank you very much for dropping by. Even if you don't stay for the whole show, I appreciate you dropping by. I really do. Okay, so Big Zebra, the floor is yours if you want to present what you asked of us for tonight.
Yes. In general, there's an interesting passage in 2 Kings 6,
Mm-hmm.
verses 1 through 7, I think. I'll put a link in group chat, or public chat, I should say,
Mm-hmm.
because it is something that I think happens often in the Bible, but is is not really well expressed, where you have a situation where there's a very curious passage in the Bible that doesn't appear to make sense, at least not
Right.
to me, unless
I'm
you
inclined to
regard it
agree.
almost as a fable or mythology, and where the link has been sort of broken over time, almost as if you had an episode from Aesop's fables,
Mm-hmm.
where um, you have a contest between a tortoise and a hare, but you don't hear how it ends, and you don't know what the moral of the story is, or even if there is a moral. Or it might be the equivalent of one of those truisms from Bruegel's paintings, where you know where some of the truisms are, but you don't know where the other ones are. For example, we have an expression, uh, "a bird in hand is worth two in the bush." But if you don't understand that they're hunting birds so that they can eat them, the expression doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And this is what I think the passage "An axe head floats" is about. So over to you, Richard, and maybe you can make sense out of this.
So spoiler alert, this is going to be boring. but
Well, it
but
is the
on the other
Bible.
hand,
I'm sure people are prepared for that.
well, you'd think a story about a floating iron axe head.
Mm.
Um, but when I started looking into these words, axe head is an assumption, though iron is a fact. What it
Hmm.
actually reads is iron thing for separating. And they said, well, that's an axe head. But it could be a spear, it could be a knife, it could be a sword, a javelin. All these things are iron things for separating. So where do they come up with this story of a floating axe head? Well, that's going to get pretty hard to discern. And I think that's why it looks like, where the hell did that come from? And
Mm.
why is that even there? And so I agree with your observation. Intuitively, you're like just like humming along, and you run across something like this. You go, what the hell? What is this? So I did what I usually do. which I did a transliterated, that is a word for word, actual definition for definition. Definition from the original language into the English, and in the order given. And this is going to sound like so chunky and terrible and hard to understand. But I'm going to switch us to this so that it can be larger. And then I'm going to go over to the other screen so that I can scroll it. Okay.
Ooh.
So see if I can do it slow enough that I can actually read it at that rate. So here you go. The transliteration. Building block son, inspired speaker prophet, boastful command, turn the head, cry for help and riches, whose God is wealth, to raise up a standing spot, ambushing judge, cramp in dire straits and tribulation, get away exercise self, to vanish descender, to carry away immature extant man, to unify those numbered, cast out, to trench in slots, shadowing rafters, be industrious, raise up a standing spot, ambushing judge, spoken boastful command, unify numbered, lacking yielding foolishness, wane away, causing to go, worshiper servant, boastful command, to get away, exercise self, to vanish, unify those numbered, humbled, cast out in a trench or wall, as shadowing rafters, iron for piercing, humble juice, collective cry, spoken boastful command, painfully induced exclamation, oh or arg. Sovereign request, immature extant man, powerful beings, boastful command, non-entity, where humbled, comprehend, raise up, standing spot, clip, fastened firm like wood, throw out, down, away, iron for piercing overflow, boastful command, exalt open hand of power, take away king, elevated highland, feed upon and consume, prevail against God, advise worshiping slave, boastful command, distinguish such a one, silenced, bereaved, concealed, one raise up, standing spot, condescending tent of rest. So that was 6:1-7.
Jesus.
All right.
Okay, please don't tell me that the axe head is Jesus.
Okay, I won't say that because
Thank
it's
you.
not.
That's good.
The axe head in this case is not Jesus. No. So here's a translation, and what I mean by translation is it's still staying to the words and in the same order, but it has some conjunctions, that weren't there before. It's not quite as chunky, but it's still original idea for original idea without taking into consideration the ancient way of looking things versus a modern language way of expressing things. So this would be like equivalent to a Young's literal, something like that. Okay. And I wish that thing would stop going sideways. A son to increase a house with inspired, a prophet by boastful commands, to turn his head away, that he cry for help and riches, whose God is material, this to raise up a place to make a stand for the ambushing judge, when he is in a cramped place and in dire straits during tribulation, in order to get away and exercise himself, to banish the descended, to carry away immature existing men, and unify those numbered, as cast out, and employ them to hollow out trenches, and take a place to make a stand for the ambushing judge, to boastfully command and to unify the numbered, as lacking who yield foolishness, who wane away, in order to unify those numbered as cast out, and to trench like slots, and be industrious, raising up a place to make a stand for the ambushing judge, who makes boastful commands, to unify those numbered, lacking, and of foolishness, to wane away, causing them to become worshiper servants to the boastful commander, to take away, let me speed that up just a little bit and slow it back down, to take away those and to exercise themselves, to hide the unified, the numbered, humbled, and cast out in trenches and walls, for the piercing iron upon the humbled, and their blood in collective crying for the spoken boastful commander, painfully exclaiming arg, for the sovereign request to immature extant men, the powerful beings will boastfully command the non-entities, where the humbled understand a raising up place, to make a stand to separate those fast and firm, and throw down to be pierced by overflowing iron, by boastful command, to exalt his open hand of power, and take away from the king of the elevated highland, and to feed upon and consume, to prevail against God, advising worshiper servants by boastful commands, to distinguish one silenced and bereaved, and the one concealed, the one raised up, to make a stand for the condescending tent of rest. And now in modern English. It gets a little better when it goes to modern English. A son will be born to increase the house, an inspired prophet made with boastful commands that turn his head away, that he cry for help and wealth of wisdom, and his God will be physical wealth. This will be to create a place for his God to make a stand as an ambushing judge, while he is tight for time and in dire straits during the time of the great tribulation. This in order to take away and to exercise himself and make vanish from the descender, and to carry away the immature men, and to unify those numbered as cast out, and to employ those to hollow out bunkers as a place to make a stand for the ambushing judge who boastfully commands, and to unify the numbered as lacking, whom yield foolishness and who wane away. This is in order to unify those numbered as cast out, and employ them to create bunkers for the stand of the ambushing judge, who makes boastful commands, in order to unify those numbered, lacking and of foolishness that wane away, causing them to become volunteer worshiper servants of him who is the boastful commander, that takes away those, and encourage them to exercise themselves, and hide that unified number, humbled and cast out, in bunkers with walls and roofs, and their blood will be spilled, and in their collective crying caused by the boastful commander, they will painfully exclaim arg. And for the sovereign requests to the immature men, those powerful beings will boastfully command those determined to die, and the humbled will only understand the rising up of a place for the stand to separate those who were fastened firmly, to throw them down, to be pierced by overflowing liquid iron, by boastful commands, to exalt his own hand of power and take them away from the king of the elevated highland, and to feed upon and consume them, and to prevail against God by advising the worshiper servants by boastful commands, to separate them from the one silenced and bereaved, and the one concealed, and the one raised up, to make a stand for the condescending tent of rest. Now that's still Bible-y talk, I'm afraid. But Mac, do you think you caught all of it?
Definitely not all of it, but I started getting glimpses of it at the end there, and at the beginning.
What is the story?
So this is about the destruction of the earth.
Yeah.
And this is more about the destruction than about the salvation, I think. I think it's descriptive of that, and how that happens, how that goes down.
So what's the condescending tent of rest?
Well, I think that's the and that's Jerusalem. That's
the New Jerusalem and or
heaven.
Heaven, right?
Yeah.
And who is the one who is making a stand against heaven?
That's the bad guy.
That's the bad guy.
Yeah, he's the king. He's the king of the elevated highland.
And who are those who are numbered to be immature? Why are they immature? How are they immature? And why and how are they being taken advantage of?
Usually immature means unenlightened or uneducated.
Right.
I guess it follows from there how they're being taken advantage of. That's an easy population to target if you're trying to take advantage of somebody. So,
and what do you think boastful command means?
Yeah, I was wondering about that too.
I'm not sure about that one.
I think people follow what they perceive as confidence.
That is true. Some people do. Confidence is very
It's
charismatic. It's a big part of charisma. Yeah.
Peace and respect immutable. Yeah, so I think it's easy for ignorant people to follow what they perceive as confidence, even when the one who is confident is saying things not true in reality.
What does the prophet Elisha's name translate as again?
My God is physical wealth. Of course, I remember that from the translating of the she bears challenge.
Are there other names that are incorporated into this text? There's Elijah. I don't recall others. Where who is the king upon high, or whatever it was, king on the high ground?
Okay, so Lord, King, and God just means a powerful being of high position, singular.
Okay,
that's all that it means. It's the same as saying El.
So
you have to take it in context. You have to take it in indicated context. When it says things like boastful commands, that idea of boastful is a negative. So if someone's giving a righteous command, that's different from a boastful command. You see, those in true confidence don't need to boast, right? So the only boasting would be done is by those in false confidence.
I remember in the standard translation, they were talking about building, erecting a post that could be turned into a meeting place.
Yeah, that actually turns out to be more like the idea of a walled place to hide. So walled and roof dug place to hide. So if I said there was a walled and roof dug out place to hide, I would say, well, that in modern terms, that's a bunker, which is why I use the word bunker. But it specifically means like dug out pathways that are long and narrow. And when they say rafters, which would be a very literal translation, which I did in the second part, in English you would say rafters. But the idea of rafters is that when you look at a set of rafters with no roof on them, you have high points like walls and deep trenches in between. That's the idea. It's not literally rafters. It's the idea of high elevated wall that are separated and long and run
When you
parallel.
use the word trenches, I think of the trenches you need in terms of battles.
Yes, that's right.
So sorry, I'm not sure where I'm going with this, because of course it's a battle of good and evil, God versus Satan, that sort of thing.
Yes, but this is describing a set of physical situations, not emotional, spiritual things. Glad you're liking it, Crypta. So yeah, the idea of trenches to hide in that run parallel to each other and are walled and roofed, but have to be dug out to be made. That sounds like fighting positions, those kinds of trenches.
Yeah.
You know, concealment and cover, like military style stuff. That's what it sounds like to me.
Well, if your enemy has to jump over a trench to get to you, that can be very useful.
Yeah, it's been useful several times on this planet. Yeah, like every time it's been used. So I think what's going on here in an overview is upon heaven's descension, that is the tent of rest. There is built to make a stand against that condescending, which condescending is not a negative term here. It means literally coming down from the sky. There's a stand. They make a stand against it, and the one who makes a stand against it was caused to cry out and ask for comfort and wisdom. That you could say he was broken down, and that's why he worships the God that he does worship, is because that God broke him down. But for those who know the Bible well, that is also recalled of the beast of Satan in the book of Revelation, where he is given a wound that cannot heal so that he becomes dependent, but he doesn't die from it.
So basically, what I want to be careful not to put words in your mouth. So what I'm suggesting is that if your analysis is correct, that the meaning of this passage has been corrupted over the years to the point where it becomes a very simple story about erecting a tent and somebody losing an axe.
A simple story about erecting a tent and an axe head floats.
Yes.
See, the idea of liquid there is not the idea of floating. It's the idea that the iron is liquid. So where they got floating iron from to read that in the King James that way is pretty damned weird.
Well, if you're making, for example, any tool, like on sites where a lot of stonework is found, you often find that they have sort of engraved into solid rock a cavity that looks like the shape of a tool, and then they pour in molten metal in order. This happened a lot with bronze tools.
Yeah, because they wouldn't last very long. You had to make them for use on site, and they'd wear out, and you'd have to make more.
Yes, and so this notion of iron, liquid iron, of course, it might be really hard to make molten iron on site, but maybe you could do it. I don't know.
Actually, all you need is coal that's been turned into coke and a billows. That's all you need. Just those two things.
I think they had a way of using those bellows and forcing air into something that looked almost like an oven.
Yes, that's what billows are for generally, yeah.
Yeah. So, and they contain the heat. I didn't know they could do that to melt iron, but of course they must have had some method.
Yeah. If you deprive coal of oxygen and you heat it and then douse it, it becomes coke. Coke burns at like twice the temperature of coal. And then when you put a billows on that, I mean, my dad worked for a reconstructed frontier American fort. Okay, and he worked there as the blacksmith for a couple years. So I've pumped a set of 4-foot billows, and seen what you can do to iron with that, and I promise you can melt iron, no problem.
Right. The I'm just going to read the to myself the Axe Head Floats bit again.
Sure.
And
read it out loud so all of us aren't just sitting here waiting.
Oh, okay. Well, an axe head floats. This is 2 Kings 6, 1 through 7. The company of the prophets said to Elisha, Look at the place. Look, the place where we meet you is too small for us. Let us go to the Jordan, where each of us can get a pole, and let us build a place there for us to meet. And he said, Go. Then one of them said, Won't you please come with your servants? I will, Elisha replied. And he went with them. They went to the Jordan and began to cut down trees. As one of them was cutting down a tree, the iron axe head fell into the water. Oh no, my lord, he cried out, it was borrowed. The man of God asked, Where did it fall? When he showed him the place, Elisha cut a stick and threw it there, and made the iron float. Lift it out, he said. And then the man reached out his hand and took it.
Yeah, that hand is actually open hand of power. It has nothing to do with some regular guy putting his hand out.
Right.
It's like the act of a god. And you can't even make that reasonably into just regular dude's hand. You can't do that. And et cetera, et cetera. The idea of the iron floating on water instead of the iron being the liquid. I don't think you can do that either reasonably.
How does, just out of curiosity, how does the Jordan River translate?
Jordan means place of descending, or the descender. In other words, heaven's arrival is what it really means in context. I translated it as condescending, because that's what it means. A place of condescending,
not just descending, but condescending.
Well, it's in order to make it not a person, you'd have to go with the act, which is condescension. And if you want to speak of the person, it would be the condescender, or the one who condescends, or the descender, or the one who descends.
I'm sorry, we lost Mac.
Mac, he just hit the wrong button. I saw him touch the screen when that happened.
Oh, okay.
He'll be back in a minute, probably. And if not, yes, God bless him.
I wonder what Orthodox Jews would make of this passage. Do we know? Because they'd be closer to the Hebrew than we would.
I went to the local rabbi and I said, have you or do Jews notice or maintain? I didn't say it this clumsily. I didn't keep him this long. But I said words that mean things like this. That the blessings of Israel on his 12 sons are the signs of the zodiac. And he says, oh, well, I've never heard of that. Or he said something that meant something like, this is a couple years back, you'll forgive me. But he said it in such a way that made me feel like he was really saying, I'm not going to talk to you about that.
Yes.
And I'm obviously not an Orthodox Jew, as he obviously is, with the tassels hanging down from his belt and his unclipped sideburns and his traditional hat. And he's probably got a thing on his forehead under his hat, something, whatever.
Yeah. And whereas you are Goyim.
I'm Goyim, that's right. To him, I'm Goyim. And I'd have to go through quite a process and really insist that I was serious in order to become accepted into his group where he would actually talk to me about these things. And I said to him, the colors in the breastplate of the priest are the same as a prismated light spectrum, and gives a certain order to the stones, and those stones applied to the tribe makes a repeating self confirming pattern through its repetition. You can see a pattern emerge, and the pattern is self-confirming, and that each of those stones are also associated to one of the signs of the zodiac. And he says, well, it sounds like you know more about it than me. And I went, you're declining, aren't you?
Well, maybe it's a part of a religious past that would make him uncomfortable. Like if he started talking, for example, one rabbi might be quite content with saying that Israel was formed from predecessors that had a pantheon, whereas another one might say not a chance.
Right.
And for example, the reference to Asherah poles in the temple, I guess it would have been the first temple.
Peace and respect, Debo.
Hello.
Yeah. When you read things like the description of the canvases or sewn together kids' skins or goat skins, or these pelts, and how they make these huge curtains, and the number of curtains and the coloration of the curtains, and that one is missing, and the one that's missing is the yellow one, and it's in the 12th position. It's just talking about the zodiac and epochs of time of man and the development of man into the ascension. That's what the whole description of the tent is. He says his phone died. Be back in a second. He's going to get to his computer.
Oh, okay. That's good. There was also, it's funny you mentioned the zodiac, because I remember this was years and years ago, seeing some show about archaeology in not Jerusalem, outside. And they had found an old temple, and the mosaic.
Wait, are you talking about archaeology?
Yeah.
Okay, keep going.
And they had found that the mosaic on the floor was well preserved, and on it was a zodiac.
Yeah, sure.
And interesting, of course, because the zodiac has 12 figures, which is an important number to Israel. And I learned a lesson there that I was astonished, because I thought Israel had a prohibition against depictions of people, animals, and so on and so forth.
No, against worship of them.
Well, that's what I thought, but and of course that is consistent. Ah, there he is. He's back.
Sorry about that.
No worries. We missed you, but you're back. So, for example, when Romans were worshiping their emperor as a living god, and then brought their emperor into Rome on those standards, they would be, the Jews have certainly objected, and I think there was almost a riot during the time of Pontius Pilate.
Right.
If I remember right, even though Tiberius was emperor, but Augustus was a god, and he might have been the one on the standard.
Right.
I'm not certain of that.
But Christians do that today, and Jews did it back then.
Yes.
It's the same as me saying, if I mistook you for an actual zebra in real life.
What do you mean mistook?
Then I would be amiss, and I would have a false impression of you. Okay. Let's just play along.
I'll try.
And so I could mistake that you're not a normal human being.
That would be correct.
Who thinks it's amusing to present themselves as a large zebra. Okay. Which there's no such thing as a large zebra on it. They're really averaged in size. They're like all the same. But anyway, and that's even funnier, because how do you get a big zebra? It's like saying I would like a large blueberry. Like, what the hell are you talking about? They're all pretty much the same. Okay, so, which I love that sense of humor. But if I create an icon that Steve is the icon that I see right now. Steve is the zebra. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then I could have a false impression of what you actually are. This is why it's bad for people to have idols. Okay. But is it less of an idol to say God and Satan are ideas? There is no physical heaven. We need to make this earth heaven, and it's our job to perfect God. Is that less idolatry? No. You've just switched the idol to a statue in a building to yourself. That's all you've done. You're still idolatry. It's still magic thinking, and it's still superstition.
Mm. And and you believe via the Book of Revelations in the future, we this ideal God as an ideal will lead us to salvation, and
not exactly. That's where Jesus comes in right there, because a set of ideals will not speak for itself, and it never does.
No.
Now, it can be represented by some living being, say Jesus or the Father or an angel messenger, any of these, archangel, whatever. They can represent God and make speech and act on the physical reality, but God itself never does anywhere in the story. It can't. Okay? So when the Jew says that God's a set of ideals, they're right. It literally is. And there's nothing wrong with saying that. But when you say, I am to become the perfection of those ideals, woo, baby, slow down. Slow down a little bit there. You've gone way too far.
I wonder what would happen if we put the 10 Commandments through this sort of rigor.
You want to know?
I'm scared now.
Happy to tell you about it.
Well, you see, it's in the 10 Commandments where this is a bugaboo of mine. I realize that I'm not correct on this, but it's there where it's explicitly said that you shall not make any depiction of any living thing in heaven or on or in the earth or in the sea. And then it turns out, well, it's actually okay that you do, just don't worship it, which I find very unsatisfying.
You know, there was
it's something like, I don't care much about your artistic representations of things. Don't take it too serious.
Yeah. And then, of course,
Mac,
immediately after making these rules, the Israelites are commanded to make an ark for the covenant that has 2 angels on top of it. And, directly contradicting what's in the commandments.
I want to hear Mac first, but I want to hit that one.
Okay. Well, anyway, I'm done.
I just think it's interesting. I've fallen into sort of the historical rabbit hole of, I think it's called iconography. There's been historical disputes, not just within Christianity, but also Islam, about the graven image commandment and what that exactly means in direct application of what we should be doing. And so, there are still Christian churches that have no representative art in the church because they're anti-iconographs. I believe I've got the word right. It's been a while since I've gone down that path, but it's this whole, it's like there's 2 ideas. Either it's okay to depict holy things like Jesus or God or whatever, or it's not okay. And then if it's not okay, what isn't holy? What in creation isn't holy if it's not okay to represent it? And so some people go all the way to, in Islam, it's all that's allowed are abstract geometry for artistic representation because it's not anything in nature. So
unless you're in Iran where you can buy pictures of the Prophet Muhammad, which is
no
really
kidding.
Me out. But
it all depends on what sect you're talking about. Yeah.
I think there were wars over this. I'm not totally sure about that, but I think at least battles were fought about this.
Well, I think the wars were just for fun, but yeah.
Come on.
People have died for a lot of unjust reasons. That's correct.
Well, it was really about succession. Who will be the successor to the I think it was the prophet's grandson, and a battle with the uncle about who should succeed. And that was the Sunni Shia separation.
In Islam, yeah. I think that's right.
As I recall.
Yeah.
Lordy.
Okay, so 10 Commandments.
Oh, no.
Let's do them. I've heard Richard do them before, but it's been a while.
Can we do the back 9?
Well, let's skip over the first 4 because they all say basically the same thing. Quit being so damn superstitious. And I have a righteous claim. That's what it says. I have a righteous claim, and drop your damn superstitions. You're being silly. Don't worship images of things, and you don't have the correct images anyway. That's basically it. The fourth one is a borderline one. Keep holy the Sabbath. If you look into all those words, it means don't forget I'm coming back for you. That's basically, don't forget I'm coming back for you. Don't let that slip your mind completely. Okay? It doesn't mean go to church on Sunday religiously. It doesn't mean that at all.
Well, thank God, because I don't want to go.
Okay. Now, unless I consider NASA and some private industry, and if I consider that God claims to own everything on the planet, including all the metals, all the water, the atmosphere, and us, and the plants and animals, how exactly would you steal from God? How exactly would you do that? So thou shalt not steal. It's an ultimatum. You can't do it. Okay, if God can restore physical self and life using the actual original genetic material that you were originally made with, only with you, quote unquote, I'm going to say fully evolved instead of your present state, like all of your genetic potential realized, wouldn't it be a fact, thou shalt not kill? Because you can't do it. So you can't steal and you can't kill. Those are facts. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. Well, angels aren't taken to marriage. How the hell are you going to do that? They don't have marriage in heaven. So how are you going to covet someone's wife? There is no wives. It's the 70s, baby. Get hip. You're either together or you're not. There is no social contracts. There is no government interference. You're either a couple or you're not, and it's your own damn business.
Love the one you're with.
Love the one you're with, honey. That's pretty much what that's saying. Okay, so what do we got left? Where's the rest of the commandments, and what do they mean? What did I miss? I feel like I missed one.
Oh, well, coveting the wife you coveting your neighbor's property, a.k.a. an ass.
The property, that's right. In communism, everyone uses everything. There is no such thing as personal property. And throughout the Bible, it describes heaven as communistic. That everyone's on equal footing. They have different jobs. They have different skill sets. They should have different jobs. But there's no person above. Even Jesus in charge of the New Jerusalem is not above, per se. He's still under God. That is, he's under the all of the standards, all the social constructs. He has to follow them too, just like anybody else does. He's on equal footing. Is it his job to judge and or judge between things? That is, make some decisions? Well, that's his skill set. Now, does that make him more or less important? Well, sort of. He's intrinsic to the total of the community, but he's not. It's not describing like some kind of totalitarian dictatorship. Oh, and he has an advisory board of the apostles, quote unquote pillars. His pillars, his advisement board that prop him up. So he's not even independent under God. He's still part of a council. Which, gosh, yeah, I'd hope so. I don't go for the whole dictatorship thing.
Honor your father and your mother.
Yeah, which father and mother? Where the Bible says, call none the father but God. And then let us make man in our, that is Adam and Eve. That is your ancestry. That whole idea. As soon as we forget our ancestors, well, we're not going to forget our ancestors in heaven because we'll be living with them. For a long life, that is for ascension and perfection or vivification. What's the other word? Quickening. Don't forget your mother and father. Yeah, I'm good with that. I think that's a fact as well. Like, how could you dismiss them and ascend?
There's
you can't just throw away Adam and Eve, the first two humans in the universe. You just can't throw them away. That's wrong. That'll never work.
There's also the not bearing false witness.
Right.
Of course, under these circumstances, it might be almost impossible to tell a lie.
I think angels have the ability to and choose not to because they see the detriment of lying and they choose truth because of its advantages. But I think that also will be a fact in heaven that no one will lie. Of course, it says that several times in the text. No liar, no moth, no rot, no rust. It says it. Yeah. Whoremongers, etc. Blah, 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 blah. We find icons on pancakes and toast. Moon, you're entirely too correct, I'm afraid.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah, we all have pareidolia. It's a pareidolia is a survival technique, and children need it for learning and empathy and facial recognition in other human beings. It's a natural part of our software, and that's all great and it's super handy. When you turn it into something it's not, it's just. People always said to me, "Oh, look, that looks like a dragon up there in that cloud." And I'm like, "I don't see a dragon. Can you help me here? Point out the something or whatever." And I never could see the dragons.
And then there's a famous thing from Hamlet. I think it very much a whale.
I think it very much a whale?
Yeah, Hamlet and maybe Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are looking at the clouds. And Hamlet plays with them by pointing out things that that cloud looks like this. And these two yes men say, yes, it does. And then Hamlet says, oh, I think it looks like something else now. And they say, yes. He's just sort of playing with them.
I don't know the story. Is he a person of power and position in that society or something?
Yeah, Hamlet, yes.
I didn't know that.
But he was, his father was king, but was then murdered by his uncle, who became king.
That would explain some things about it that I've heard. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, I'm falling asleep, so I am going to sign off if that's okay.
Thanks for hanging in as long as you could, Steve. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, and thank you both very much for having me. It was great.
Really good to see you, Steve. Thank you.
Good to see you both. And peace and respect.
Peace and respect to you, sir.
Bye.
By the way, he's kidding. I've never had zebra. I have had horse, but not zebra. So I haven't had him yet.
Ever had kangaroo?
I have not. I have not.
I haven't either.
My horse, we couldn't afford fences, and we had the horses tethered out, and there was a lightning and thunderstorm and rain. And my horse was apparently a little bit skittish in that situation and got up on a hillside and wrapped around several trees and hung himself.
Wow.
And Mom had the best canned beef that winter. And all of us are like, Mom, we can't. How did you afford to get this beef? And it's delicious. It's tender. It's sweet. It's not too gamey. Yeah.
The trick with horse is to cook it slow.
I don't know what she did, but it was tasty.
Richard, before we sign off, I told you earlier I was going through the Comprehensive Bible, or yes. I'm sorry, the Coherent Bible. And yes. I always stumble when we get to the snake part and you connect it to the snake nebula. That feels like a reach to me. And
Okay.
I've gone down the Blue Letter Bible, and I haven't found a lot of support there. I mean,
Okay.
I see where sometimes the snake, could refer to a constellation, but not specifically this nebula.
Okay.
And you're very specific about it in the translation that you're working on. So, could you provide some clarity to that before we?
I think if there's an elimination process that's thorough enough, a person has no choice. First of all, okay. So I'm basing this on an overall elimination process.
Okay.
If
overall
I
within
said
the text,
oh, it's definitely definitionally within the text.
right?
I mean, you can read it in the English and it's plainly there. Cursed or promised to be. That's what the word cursed means.
Right.
Promised to be above the cattle. That is the Taurus constellation. And all the beasts of the field. Peace and respect, Marty.
Hey, Marty.
Love that witch.
Me too.
My favorite witch, actually. Let's see. Cursed above the cattle and all the beasts of the field. The word field there means a plain or flat place or singular plane, plane, that kind of plane. Okay? Like
the galaxy?
Well, yeah, our galaxy is a singular plane overall. That's true.
Yeah.
So is our solar system. It's a different plane, but it's on a plane.
Yeah.
And in fact, the zodiac is too. And since throughout the text, it bothers to name all the positions of the zodiac by symbology and the symbology of the time. When it says cursed above the cattle and all the beast of the field, and it uses beast of the field to express that arrangement several times, I have to say, as a consensus, as an overall, if it says beast of the field, but they have no physical activity in themselves, it's talking about the zodiac. And when beast of the field act upon reality, it's talking about wild animals.
Okay.
That would be the difference there.
Okay.
So they're beast of the field that do nothing. They just are static.
Right. Gotcha.
Okay. So I think whenever it uses that terminology in the situation, the context is static, that is talking about the zodiac, and that seems to follow pretty good. In fact, I find no exceptions. There's no exceptions I've found so far.
That alone clarifies a lot. So that's very helpful.
And then go ahead.
Yeah. Well, when I read beasts, I think beasts, especially in Genesis. It's I think it's conditioning and bias. It's crazy how deep it goes. I mean, I really, I consider myself somebody who's been sort of agnostic / leaning atheist for a long time. Mm-hmm. But the understanding, especially of Genesis, when I'm reading it, it's like, it's hard to describe, but it's like I've got two different views of it that are simultaneously operating, and
right.
I'm very familiar with one of them and not familiar with yours and trying to stay focused on yours. And
are you familiar with the term intrinsic religiosity?
No.
Okay.
No, but it's sort of
it's addressing the psychological impacts onto a singular individual where they have been told the same thing so many times, their brain becomes conditioned to accept it, even if it makes sense or not. Like Dr. Joshua Bowen tells the story of being an atheist who for a decade had fears of going to hell. Mm-hmm. He's an atheist who doesn't believe in hell with fears of going to hell.
Right. Wow.
That's a real thing, but what we're really, and I don't want to be rude, and I'm not trying to diminish you at all. We've been brainwashed by this tradition, by this dogmatic view, and it's really hard for us to get away from that. And it's so thoroughly soaked into our society, you can't hear something else.
Right.
Like anywhere. I wanted to get in with Steve, but he had to go, and I can appreciate that and respect that. But if I asked you, he said, then immediately they made an idol, and he quoted the Ark of the Covenant, right?
That's right.
Do you know what the word ark means?
I think that word can mean a few things.
Well, I mean, biblically, the word ark.
Yeah, biblically, I mean, when it's referring to the Ark of the Covenant, I think it refers to a container.
It does
a
mean
vessel.
container.
Yeah.
Okay, can you tell me what covenant means?
An agreement.
Okay, and
or a contract.
What's the contextual contract or agreement that's described in the Bible? What's that?
Well, it's the agreement that God will offer an avenue of salvation to his people.
Okay. Now, contained within the Ark of the Covenant, that whole idea is completion of the contract via a container. What's the Ark of the Covenant?
Well, it's heaven.
It's heaven itself.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So it's even if you make a statue of it, boy, I hope it's accurate.
Right.
But if you take this icon that I use, which is chapter 4 of the book of Revelation, and in your mind, turn it sideways. So you're looking at it from the same plane. What you have is a big block at the bottom of priests that support the seraphim with their wings facing in. And above that, the mercy seat. Perfect. See, what people don't realize is heaven is the Ark of the Covenant. And whether or not we made a statue about it is pretty irrelevant.
Right.
But it's describing a side view of heaven, like an angelic view of heaven. That's what it's describing. Which is why the priests support it and why it encircles Jericho for 7 actual years.
Right.
Because it's the same story, just again and again and again. The walled city of Jericho is surrounded, and the priests march around it for 7 time frames. It's not actually days, it's actually years. But they said, well, they're not going to march around it for 7 years. That doesn't make sense. So they wrote days, but they could have wrote years. But with heaven's arrival to the earth, heaven surrounding the earth, the priests are marching around the earth for 7 years. That's like, oh, yeah, of course. Yeah. So, I mean, it all has a lot to do with when I look into the definitions of these words and I use them in the continuous fashion that they're being used in a context that is coherent within itself. I don't think we actually have a choice about what this is. I mean, I'm of the opinion there's no choice. I don't have a choice.
Right.
But it's definitely not what tradition is describing.
Right. That's for sure.
And I know that doesn't really help you. I'm sorry.
Well, it's a step. I wish I was convinced like you. I wish I could kind of rest in a conviction kind of place, but it's interesting to have had my fundamental ideas upset. So, yes, Marty, I'll make a point.
We're supposed to do another show sometime soon. I'm hoping to.
That'll be great.
I'm working hard to slay that witch.
She's down.
She's down for it. She is.
Definitely.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, it's quite a journey. It's quite a remarkable thing. Anyway, the big question that's been on my mind lately, just reviewing Genesis and everything again, is
Love you too, Marty.
Where would I be? What camp would I be in if this thing shows up? Or when this thing shows up after the tribulation, after the signs befall us, where will I be? Especially after my relationship with you, Richard. I wonder, will I be more apt to climb aboard and listen to the angels? I'd like to think I am, but I would be. But I wonder,
climb aboard and listen to the angels. How do you think you get to judgment?
What do you
According to the
mean?
story, you'll have already met them for judgment. Like they are the transportation to the area where we get judged. You already met an angel.
But I get a choice, right?
Of course
I get to say no to them.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
And some people will. Yeah, that's
Peace
what
and
I'm
respect,
saying.
Joel.
Where would I
Some
be?
people will say no. Yes, absolutely. I'm sure a very common story will sound something like this. Heaven is on another plane of existence, and this is believers
Right.
saying this.
Right.
Heaven is on
I've heard
another
this.
plane of existence. These are alien biologicals designed to trick me into thinking that they're angels.
That story is already in place. I've
In
seen that on
movies.
Christian websites and in movies. Yeah.
What do you mean Christian websites?
Like there are people, fundamentalist Christians especially, who say this is how Revelation's going to go down. This is what we need to be aware of, is aliens pretending to be God.
Are you serious?
Yes, I'm very serious. Yeah, I could find links for you. It's almost cliche in the conspiracy kind of world. It's a very common thing. There's a Operation Bluebeam is a big central part of that, the narrative, where the government has developed technology to mimic an alien invasion, which will claim to be Jesus. Yeah. There's a whole thread
wow.
about this.
You know what I want to say to that immediately? Demons have been busy with prayer. Holy crap.
Yeah, that is in place. I mean, it's a fringe thing, I think, but I mean, I'm not sure what's fringe anymore, frankly.
Well,
I don't know what's going on in this world. So.
What becomes mainstream when 80% of the population is, or 85, 90% is able to accept reality as it shifts? Do people like that become the majority left behind?
That's right. I wonder.
They almost certainly would, of believers.
Yeah.
Because why else would you reject what you just saw happen if you didn't have some kind of narrative pre-selected like you just described? Dude.
Right.
If I just saw, I have to tell you, man, if I saw non-human friendlies with such technology that they could even come here, offer me a ride to explore the, you think I'd say no? It would be for me personally, it'd be, okay, I'm going to die anyway. What the hell? I would become a voluntary lunch if you just let me leave this solar system first. You just let me see enough space that I got to leave the solar system, and you can have me for lunch. Kill me gently. That's fine. I have no problem with that. Like, what's the downside here? I would have spent a boring life on Earth, slowly getting older and sicker until I die. That doesn't sound really appealing. I get to explore a little space.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that. Maybe I'd be hesitant, though, too. I mean, I do have some fondness for this planet, and I'm pretty attached to it.
I like it, but it can't last forever.
That's for sure. Especially where we're at now. That's for sure. I don't know.
And also in the book of Revelation, the time is kept short so that because eventually even the elect would be deceived. Joel, that's correct. It's going to be that hard to tell.
Yeah, if you ask a Christian how they would react to the appearance of the aliens, they would say it would be a demonic
trick.
That's true.
That's a really good point, Sammy. And Mac, you're right. And I hadn't even thought about it. And I didn't know there was this movement that you just described. I've heard Christians like, oh my God, this is so demonic. I just want to vomit. It's really satanic when Jesus is Lord says things like, all aliens are only demons. I'm like, holy crap. Do you realize you have no idea what you just said? Well, now on the arrival of angels, physical beings from the sky, if that doesn't sound familiar in any of the stories, that angels are physical beings that come down from the sky and settle onto the earth and like interact with.
It's a one-to-one correspondence. It's
not real vague.
Yeah.
You can say they're spirit beings of light or whatever, but what it really reads is they are enlightened. That is, they know the truth, and we don't. They're not light beings, they're beings of light. That's a very different thing. Oh, gosh. Anyway, yeah. What you just said was very disturbing, and I'm going to have to go and look into it, and thank you for the information.
Would you like me to send you some links? I think I could find some stuff. Right on.
Everything that you know easily how to find that doesn't inconvenience you.
I'll do a little digging. Happily. I'm sorry to have disturbing news for you though, but
no, I want truth even when it's difficult. I'm happy to have more truth than I have. And the truth is there's a cult out there that has already been pre-planned to deject heaven on arrival. I'd like to know about that, and I'd like to know a lot about it.
Right on. We'll dive in.
I want to cry, but I still have to go and learn about it. You know. All right. Well, that's a good place to stop. Please do send me those links, and don't think I don't appreciate you telling me that. I do appreciate it.
Yeah, right on. No problem.
Right on.
I'm not used to teaching you something, so I appreciate it.
I got no problem with it. I'm happy to learn.
Heck yeah, that's awesome. It's always a pleasure, Richard. Thank you. Thanks for spending some time this week with me. Yeah.
Peace and respect to you. Hope we can do this again next Wednesday. Now that I'm done with that remote job, it should be doable.
All right, sounds good. Me too.
All right, brother.
I hope so
too. As long as they don't change your schedule again.
Oh boy, I'll tell you what. Everybody's falling to Omicron, but I feel like it'll burn through our staff fast enough, and then we'll be back. I mean, after it gets us, it can't get us again. I think so. I don't know. It's one day at a time at the restaurant. So
I'm going to say hello to the chat a little bit. Feel free to stay or leave or whatever you need to do, sir. Thank you so much for your time.
All right. My pleasure. Thank you. Yeah, I'll be around for a bit, but I'm going to dig around for some links for you. So
thanks.
I'll see you.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks, Mac. Have a great week. Welcome, Wild Heart, again. What can I say, guys? I appreciate you guys dropping by if you watch the whole show or not. And I'm not proud of myself. I would be very pleased if you actually played these shows in the background. If you decide you don't want to watch the rest of the show, I'd appreciate it if you muted it and let it play in the background and ignored it completely. I'd appreciate that. I know that YouTube would notice the difference, and that might help. Yes, I think I'm telling the truth. We all do. Yes, I think what I'm saying is important. I wouldn't bother to say it. Yes, I'm a zealot because I'm compelled. Okay? If I'm wrong, I'm telling you guys a very, very silly story. If I'm right, this will save lives. Just on the bare potential, on the mere potential that it could save lives. I'm more than happy to be able to say it. Peace and respect to you all. Thanks for stopping by, Crypta and Wild Heart and Peebo and Joel and Sammy. And, of course, the two guys that make this show possible. Thank you again, Mac and Big Zebra. Appreciate you guys. Okay. See you guys next week. Till then, I want you all to know that I truly do look forward to the day. We're all great friends.